Hi, welcome to my video presentation. I'm Kathleen Macy Bulalim from ACT 1B. Today, we're going to tackle about the cultural and intercultural modes of communication in China. How does the Chinese culture communicate? In direct communication, as an extension of the need to maintain harmonious relations, the Chinese rely heavily on indirect communication. They rely less on words and are more attentive to posture, expression, and tone of the voice to draw meaning. Their speech is often ambiguous and they might understate their point. Verbal. The Chinese language is one of the most ancient and complex in the world. It is officially the oldest written language in the world, with a history spanning at least 6,000 years. The Chinese alphabet is made of upwards of 40,000 characters, which represent sounds and are used in sequence to make up words. There are many dialects of Chinese, but only 3 are spoken widely throughout the country. The most common by far is Mandarin Chinese, which is the official dialect of China, and is the language taught in almost all Chinese schools and used on TV and in the media. Most Americans who learn Chinese choose to study Mandarin because of its prevalence in Chinese culture. Cantonese is the second most common dialect and is used widely in Hong Kong, Guangdong, and southern Guangxi Zhuang. Because of this large regional concentration, many Chinese immigrants and expatriates to the nearby regions of the Pacific coast of the United States, Washington, Oregon, and California speak Cantonese. Toisanese, another dialect, emerged from the Guangdong region. It is not nearly as common heard as Mandarin or Cantonese and is not used in the media. Though the verbal languages cannot be universally understood by all Chinese, the written language can be understood by all who understand Chinese. The written form consists of characters which are simplified traditional, phonetic, or slang. Simplified characters are condensed versions of traditional and classical Chinese characters and use less pen strokes. The Chinese language is so complex and vastly different in many other languages that translations and interpretation proves an extremely difficult task, and translators must keep in mind not only literal meaning but cultural differences and how the different languages represent differing worldviews of the two cultures. There also exists a form of English Chinese, in which Chinese sounds and words are written phonetically in the Roman alphabet to be better understood and learned by foreign speakers. This written form is often seen fortune cookies. Unlike English and Romantic languages, verbs, nouns, or adjectives do not have to agree with each other in tense in Chinese. Additionally, there does not exist plural and singular form of words. Instead, a number is added to the sentence to tweak the meaning. Non-verbal, the Chinese are known to be influenced by Confucius philosophical thinking that is evident from their preserved personalities that do not express much through gestures. That being said, the Chinese pay close attention to the tone of voice, facial expressions, and the posture to understand how the person feels. Moreover, they consider straight eye contact or staring as disrespectful, and when in crowded places, they do not make eye contact to keep their privacy. The Chinese and other East Asian cultures are known to place the most emotional importance on the eyes when expressing and recognizing emotions. According to one study, Western Europeans fixate more on the mouth region and East Asians fixate more on the eye region when recognizing facial expressions. In the Chinese culture, information and nonverbal cues are communicated through the eyes rather than through expressive smiles or frowns, which Western cultures and Americans use to communicate. There are few specific gestures which hold different meaning in China than in other cultures. Placing the forefinger to the lips and creating a sha or shu sound resembles sneezing and represents disapproval in China, more severe than its meaning of silence in the United States and other Western cultures. Additionally, to beckon someone to approach you in China, the gesture is a hand extended toward the person with the palm down, moving the fingers back and forth. This is often confusing to Americans as it appears as if the person is waving goodbye. The American beckoning gesture, an upward-facing palm with the index finger moving back and forth, is considered offensive in China, as they avoid pointing with one finger. A Chinese business meeting begins with a handshake. Although attitudes toward physical contact and spatial difference are gradually becoming less low contact in China and other Asian countries, affectionate, touching, and public displays of affection remain very different compared to Western cultures. A study concluded that Asian couples were far less likely to walk with arms around one another than were Latino couples. Generally, close contact is avoided in public and touching is kept at a minimum in China, especially in business and professional situations. However, handshakes are an accepted form of greeting and are commonly used during introductions and business meetings. Chinese communication style unless you speak Chinese. Mandarin being the most common as well as the official dialect, it can be difficult to do business in many parts of China without the aid of a translator. English language levels are very patchy, and although a layer of fluent English speakers exists, the layer is quite thin and levels fall away very quickly. Communicating in China can therefore be a slow, laborious activity and fraught with constant dangers. In terms of misunderstanding and mistranslation, don't assume comprehension, cover the same ground several times, and constantly check for understanding. One of the reasons that communication can be such a problem in China is that, along with many other Asians, the Chinese find it extremely difficult to say no. Saying no causes both embarrassment and loss of face, and it is therefore better to agree with things in a less than direct manner. Thus, anything other than an unequivocal yes, probably no. Be very wary of phrases such as yes, but it is might be difficult, and yes is probably. It is also difficult to deliver bad news, and this is often done through the use of an intermediary who can soften the blow and try to preserve as much goodwill within the relationship as possible. The Chinese have a reputation for impassiveness, and this is largely based on Western misinterpretation of Chinese body language. As with the Japanese, the Chinese use a very limited amount of visual body language, and Westerns interpret this rigidity as a lack of responsiveness and emotion. Lack of overt body language does not mean that the Chinese do not show their actions, more that Westerns are not skilled at reading it across the cultural divide. Chinese people do not like direct communication. They prefer a slower approach that begins with the conceptualization of an idea before adding comments to it. The Chinese expect you to read between the lines to understand what they are trying to tell you indirectly. Additionally, they get uncomfortable when somebody uses blunt communication. In China, everybody chooses to build long-term relationships rather than short-term, advantageous business connection. However, they always keep it formal and never show disrespect to others. Since birth, the Chinese are thought to avoid showing emotions. When it comes to refusing somebody, the Chinese never say it directly. They simply do not like saying anything directly, rather give you an impression of maybe. Factors that affect Chinese communication by now. You might have understood that Chinese communication patterns are complex. To understand why the Chinese behave and talk the way they do, you should consider understanding the factors that affect Chinese communication. Tonal language. The Chinese language has its syllabic structure as well as phonemics that vary from other languages. While speaking other foreign languages, there remains a touch of the Chinese accent unless they are very proficient in their respective foreign language. Typological differences. The Chinese have their own methods of organizing ideas, linking facts, or emphasizing points. The language does not use any singular plural forms, thus making its translation to foreign language absurd and irrelevant. Early education for children. Chinese teach the children in the early years to avoid conversations that involve boasting about themselves a lot. They are nurtured to cooperate and remain respectful under all circumstances. Bottom line, the Chinese communication methods, as complicated as they might seem, are not just merely focused on communication. They are rather focused on developing a healthy community in which every person is respectful and humble towards each other. A handshake is a becoming standard Chinese business greeting, particularly when meeting foreigners. However, it is the safest to wait for your host to offer their hand first in case they prefer not to shake. Don't expect an enthusiastic firm handshake. Chinese handshakes are often prolonged with a limp hand rather than a firm grip. People use a limp hand to signify respect and humility. If you don't shake hands, nod your head slightly when meeting. While it's difficult to maintain any personal space in public, in China's crowded cities, it is polite to consider another person's space in a business setting and have only minimal physical contact. Avoid gestures that backslapping or touching someone's arm when speaking to them. The pinky finger can cause offense in China. You shouldn't point with your pinky finger because it's like giving someone the thumbs down here. If you need to gesture to an object or person, it's safest to use your whole hand rather than a finger. In a Western country, if you want to be kind to someone, you place your palm up and move your index finger. In the East, you should avoid this motion. Instead, place the palm down and move all fingers together, which the Western may confuse because we use a similar hand motion to wave goodbye. Do Chinese people bow? Don't make the mistake of thinking all Asian cultures are the same. Bowing relates more to Japanese culture than Chinese. In China, bowing is a sign of respect for elders and ancestors. When a Chinese person bows, they make a fist with their right hand held and their left hand in front of their stomach. They may bow slightly or low depending on the level of respect they wish to express. Is it okay to look a Chinese person in the eye? A fleeting look is fine, but avoid direct and prolonged eye contact in China. Steady eye contact is not appropriate, particularly when a subordinate is talking to their superior. If the gaze is too long, they may interpret it as a gesture of defiance or challenge. So don't be surprised if someone you are talking to looks away or appears disinterested. Do I need to be careful with my hands? Chinese people don't like to use their hands or arms to talk like many Westerns do. If you are someone who talks with their hands, try to limit your hand gestures as they can make you seem rude or obnoxious. In fact, keep your hands by your side throughout your China trip. Don't be too familiar by touching your host. They can be a friendly pat on the arm or back as too much touchiness. Different cultures require you to communicate differently to how you would back home. If you don't have time to travel to China to source manufacturers and suppliers yourself. The Chinese communicate through a range of phrases and supporting facial expressions, gestures, and silence in the favor of the issue at hand. Essentially, the goal of a Chinese speaker is to remain polite and save face for everyone involved in the discussion. That would be all. Thank you.